Sometimes when we play video games, we come across a character that just won't die in a fight. So much so that we may even scream the phrase, "Why won't you freaking die?" at the top of our lungs when playing. The sad part is that a few people will scream that phrase in a public place and be completely unaware of half of the people within earshot staring at them in shock, while the other half are reaching for their phones to call the cops. Today I thought it would be a good idea to celebrate the characters that soak up the pain like a 3 Days Grace song while making our lives a living hell. The only rule for this list is that characters chosen will not be something that's so blatantly unfair that it's near impossible to kill without godlike competency. Looking at you, Dark Souls. With that out of the way, let's dive into my pick for 7 tanks in video games. You know, I both love and hate a good zombie apocalypse. On one hand, the complete social breakdown of our society, rules, and order really appeals to the anarchist in me. The thought of being able to pillage and kill on a whim sounds like a lot of fun, but then I remembered that I'm in a zombie apocalypse. Shit. Zombie apocalypses in video games seem pretty straightforward, but no less prone to neglecting to give an origin to the viruses that screw everything up. Well, outside the whole government-created cop-out response. Yet when the outbreak is based on something very real, like the cordyceps fungus, then I can really get on board with the whole end of the world thing. The Last of Us has a zombie outbreak that is not only based on the real fungus, but also like the real fungus, it grows over the years during the fall of society. After 10 years or so, we get introduced to the first tank on this list, the Bloater. Talk about a monster you don't want to be stuck in a small place with. The Bloater is the rarest of the infected, with the cordyceps fungus covering the entirety of the beast, creating a thick plate of armor. These guys can take a lot of abuse from normal weapons as they stomp towards Joel. Meleeing a Bloater is very much out of the question. If the Bloater grabs Joel, it's an instant game over. Though comparatively it's slower than the other infected, it can still move at an alarming pace towards the player. It's a pace that can best be described as Gabriel Iglesias walking up to a box of donuts.
Oh, I was gonna get nasty.
So you've got a big guy that can take a lot of abuse, and it's an instant death if he touches you. Does it have a weakness? Fortunately, yes. Setting the Bloater on fire and hitting it a couple of times with a shotgun is usually your best bet. Without fire though, you'll be in for a prolonged fight. Thankfully, there's only a few Bloaters in The Last of Us and most of them can be avoided. Still, this is one tank that I would rather not challenge to a boxing match. For our next tank, we're heading to the world of Pokemon. Admittedly, this is a hard one for me. With over 800 Pokemon to choose from, only a few could be considered a tank, and even then it's a tough pick. I could go with either Chansey or Blissey with their stupidly high health and special defense, or maybe Snorlax. How about Shuckle just for a laugh? I really couldn't decide. That's when Fawful's minion chimed in. I was driving him back home from town and told him about my dilemma to pass the time. He then immediately said, "Why not Pyukumuku?" I then responded with, "You mean that Pokemon that looks like such a pushover that people in Sun and Moon chuck it for sport?" So I did some research. Holy crap. Pyukumuku is a lot like Shuckle in a lot of ways in that it looks really weak and unassuming. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a sport in the game where these little guys are hurled against their will. It's like someone at Game Freak pitched the idea of having dwarf tossing and after being laughed at, programmed this shit in out of spite. Thankfully, the defenses of the Pyukumuku are so good that it doesn't get hurt. So how does this little guy get on the list when Pokemon like Blissey or Shuckle either have much better health or superior defenses? Good question, because Pyukumuku is a sociopath. Unlike Blissey, Pyukumuku has great base stats in both defense and special defense, and even though Shuckle's defenses are superior, Pyukumuku has higher base health, and it has the move Recover at its disposal. So how does this translate into something like competitive battles? Simple. Use Curse a few times to boost Pyukumuku's defenses even further, recover as needed, and then use Toxic. If the opposing Pokemon is a Steel or Poison type, use Soak, then toxic. The result is the opposing Pokemon having a long and drawn out death from toxic damage. Pyukumuku also has the ability Unaware, just in case watching the tears of your enemy wasn't enough for you. Unaware ignores the opposing Pokemon's stat changes, which is just a kick in the balls at this point. Though this set on Pyukumuku is time consuming and could potentially be countered with something like Synchronize, it's a set that's effective enough to let a Pyukumuku sweep an entire team if they're unprepared. Who knew such a little Pokemon could be such a pain in the ass to get rid of? When talking about tanks, we can't just sit back and ignore the various tanks in the game Overwatch. After all, that's what an entire class of heroes are called. Much like Pokemon, I found it hard to choose just one character from this roster. Each hero can be a pain to get rid of if you happen to be fighting against them, but much like with Pokemon, the tank heroes in Overwatch have pros and cons that cancel each other out or are meant for certain situations. The most obvious choice would be Reinhardt because he encapsulates the visual aspects of a tank, but for this list I decided to go with Winston. Winston is a guerrilla scientist that was part of a genetic enhancement program on the surface of the moon. I'll give you a moment to wrap your head around what I just said. As a tank hero, Winston is what you consider a dive character. He can jump into a group of enemies with his jump pack and cause some disruption, and then just as quickly jump out. This is naturally a dangerous thing to do if you're staring down another team that is intent on making you well ventilated. So to cause further chaos, Winston will drop a barrier overhead that he can fire through, but the enemies can't, allowing him to further cause havoc before jumping away. Winston is by no means a damage powerhouse though. His Tesla cannon has a low damage output, but at least it auto-aims enemies in range and can phase through barriers. The reason I chose Winston for this list wasn't simply because he can cause a little chaos and get away just fine, but rather for his ultimate ability, Primal Rage. Primal Rage is exactly what it sounds like, a primate going apeshit. Upon activation, Winston's health is fully recovered and his total health increases to 1000. During this time, Winston can only use his jump pack and melee attacks, but his melee attacks pack so much force that it can knock his targets off the map. It's like you're being punched by an angry gorilla or something. Oh wait! All this makes Winston naturally hard to get rid of, but where Winston shines most is his synergy with the other heroes. Charging headlong into an opposing team could get you killed quickly despite all that bulk, so having someone like Mercy or Zenyatta backing you up as you fly in will help maximize survivability. The best part about Winston's ability to tank hits, however, came from the other heroes that helped increase his total health. With an armor pack from Torbjorn, a shield from Symmetra, a temporary armor pack from Brigitte's repair and rally abilities, and a sound barrier from Lucio, Winston would have the highest possible health in the freaking game when he uses Primal Rage, with a combined total of 1850. Unfortunately, Symmetra and Torbjorn had been reworked, but support from Brigitte and Lucio are still welcoming. Though not a powerhouse, Winston's mobility and sponge-like qualities make him perfect for this list. It's endearing, until he goes into rage mode. It's 2017. You just bought the Nintendo Switch and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You're now exploring the beautiful landscape without a care in the world. That is until you walk into the wrong neighborhood. And I don't just mean one neighborhood. There's like 8 different neighborhoods that you don't want to roll up to, especially if you're not properly equipped. But no neighborhood in Breath of the Wild will make you drop a deuce more than when you stumble into the home of a Lionel. When a Lionel sees you wandering through its turf, he won't attack you right away and will instead just stare Link down. Refusing to get you and your soiled pants out of dodge as quickly as possible will prompt one of the most brutal fights in the game. There are 5 types of Lionels in Breath of the Wild, and the weakest of them has 2000 health, which is 500 points more than a Guardian Stalker. Unlike Overwatch's Winston, that bulk isn't just for show, they have the attack power to back it up. During a normal run of Breath of the Wild, the strongest Lionel you can face is a Silver Lionel, which boasts 5000 freaking health. If you go on to Master Mode, however, you will face off against a Golden Lionel, which has 7500. To put all that health into perspective, it's pretty common to burn through a weapon or two when facing off against a red Lionel. So let's say it's about 1 weapon per 1000 health. You'll burn through 7 weapons at least against a golden Lionel. And I'm not talking about any weapon either. I'm talking about single-handed weapons that can generally deal between 30 to 40 damage. Now let's say you have an overabundance of weapons. Okay, do you know how to dodge? Lionels actually know how to fight, and unless you know how to do a perfect dodge or a perfect guard, you will get your ass handed to you. Both techniques are basically mandatory against Lionels, as they can attack both hard and fast, and if you want to get through all that bulk, you'll need to be just as quick on top of having the weapons to strike back. If you run out of usable weapons against a Lionel, run. Just fucking run. If you have the resources and combat skills to take down this monster, then you will be well rewarded.
You must be so proud.
Yeah, but I mean, it could be dodging better.
Oh freaking joy, we're back in a zombie apocalypse. What fun! Well, to be honest, calling the infected in Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 zombies is completely inaccurate. They just have a real severe case of rabies. They're not actually dead, which is a pretty major requirement to be considered an actual zombie. Then again, I'd rather be dead than to be so sick that I can be decapitated by a frying pan. It would suck even more if I was an infected in Left 4 Dead and I was killed by my own kind. Which leads to the next guy on this countdown. Get ready to panic fire because here comes the aptly named Tank! The tank in Left 4 Dead is a tank in the greatest of tanky descriptions. I mean, did you hear the name of this guy? Or is this video playing in the background while you're actually on Pornhub? Anywho, the tank is the largest and strongest of all the infected. The tank is also the only special infected that needs to find a target to attack. If for some reason he gets trapped somewhere without a target in sight, he just dies. When the tank is not being stupid enough to get stuck somewhere without a target, it is literally pummeling through regular infected to get after the survivors. Soloing a tank is possible, though it's only recommended if you're Steve-O from Jackass. Tanks will send survivors flying with a single punch, do considerable amounts of damage by throwing slabs of concrete it just so happens to rip out of the ground, or if you're me, the tank will just appear in either blind spots or behind you while making you shit yourself.
Oh, that's
Oh
good.
no, I'm here all-star. That means we have the tank.
The fucking
Oh wait, the tank's here?
tank.
Oh fuck, there's a tank! Oh my god! Ah! Get off my dick! Run! Run away! Run away! No! I'm down! I gotta take a shot!
The tank naturally has a lot of health, with it having 3,000 on easy, so a group assault is always best. You'll generally know when a tank is around when the ground starts to shake and his distinctive theme starts to play. The best ways to combat a tank go as follows. Slow it down with fire and unload your weapon until it goes click. Nothing short of death will stop a tank, no matter who the target is. In the Sacrifice chapter, Bill was unfortunate enough to be the target of 3 of these behemoths. Naturally, he takes them all on after powering the lift so the other survivors can get the safety, which results in his death. Bill had the balls to try to shoot off a tank's balls. That's pretty ballsy.
Run or shoot. Run or shoot. Whoa.
For our next video game tank, we are entering the world of Monster Hunter, or more commonly known as the Dark Souls before Dark Souls. Specifically, we're going to look at a Generation 1 monster. Admittedly, there's a little bit of favoritism for this tank, since there are other monsters that could be considered more of a tank, but none are quite as intimidating at first sight than the LAO-SHAN Lung. The LAO-SHAN Lung is an elder dragon whose name translates to Old Mountain Dragon, a name that couldn't possibly be any more accurate. LAO-SHAN Lung is huge, and even though he's not the biggest monster in the series anymore thanks to the likes of, quote, newer monsters like Raviente, he's still a behemoth of a monster that just wants to tear through a fortress and be on its way. And sadly, it's your job to stop the beast. Outside of Area 5, the LAO-SHAN Lung will slowly lumber its way through the canyon, and it will shrug off any attempt of damage as it makes its way to the heart of the fortress. When it gets to the front of the fortress, it will proceed to start breaking down the gate. It's during this time where your skills as a hunter are put to the test. You're being stared down by a monster the size of a mountain that can take the full force of a Dragonator and still fight. And may I remind anyone that doesn't know what a Dragonator is, it's a giant freaking spike that impales monsters. The fortress is equipped with 4 of these fucking things, and the LAO-SHAN lung can still keep going. Basically, you have to keep fighting until the monster either dies or you run out of time, which will usually result in the monster being, quote, repelled. What makes the LAO-SHAN lung even more interesting is that unlike most Elder Dragons that can be repelled, the LAO-SHAN lung doesn't carry over the damage that has been dealt to it. Basically, this means that when you challenge this Elder Dragon after repelling it, you're starting the fight from scratch. If that wasn't a testament to the LAO-SHAN lung's ability to tank hits, consider this. The LAO-SHAN lung can only be killed in Area 5, and let's say your hunter is decked out with the best weapons and armor, that you can make the monster flinch frequently. The LAO-SHAN lung will keep tanking your hits until time is up if it's outside of Area 5, which will force it to be repelled. All of this tank power suits the LAO-SHAN lung really well, but you may notice that it doesn't seem to be all that aggressive. In reality, it's a pretty docile monster, and despite all of that bulk, you may be alarmed to hear that the LAO-SHAN lung is actually running away from a goddamn Fatalis. If this big guy is afraid of something, you know some shit's about to go down. Maybe the Fatalis Lao fight should just take place right outside Area 5. Then it can't lose. Okay, seriously? What the fuck is up with all the zombies already? Holy hell, our society seems to be obsessed with them to the point that some genius has to invent real zombies to destroy society. And like all zombie apocalypses nowadays, there will be special zombies that are just harder to kill. Thankfully, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Call of Duty is coming to our rescue. A sentence that has never been said, ever. Call of Duty has a game mode called Nazi Zombies, and I can't think of a better excuse to blow off the heads of Nazis than by turning them into zombies. This game mode is actually something I keep close to my little black heart because it's how my older brother introduced me to the Call of Duty series. He would visit during his time off from the Navy, toss me a controller, and we would shoot up some zombies while he used Xbox Live to communicate with some of his buddies. During one of these zombie slaughtering shenanigans, we were playing on the map Call of the Dead when I noticed something a little off. I had turned and looked at a frozen lake and saw what appeared to be an electrified zombie that, at first glance, seemed to be holding a hammer. Instinctively, I did what any logical person that sucks at Call of Duty would do. I shot it. The screen shook, I heard a loud roar, and then the immediate screams of my brother and his friends going, "Who pissed off George?" George Romero was a real-life American filmmaker responsible for the Night of the Living Dead, which is considered to be the progenitor of the zombie movie genre. In Call of the Dead, George makes his appearance doing a film shoot when an actual zombie outbreak occurs. During the Call of the Dead campaign, George slowly comes out of the frozen lake with a creepy blue aura while holding what is actually a studio light. The biggest mistake to do with George Romero is shoot fucking George Romero. Upon taking even the slightest bit of damage, George starts sprinting at the players while swinging his light. The screen will start to shake, and upon being hit, players will be electrocuted. What really makes George a tank is the fact that he could take a massive amount of abuse, and he's completely immune to the nuke and the insta-kill power-up. His starting health will also depend on how many players there are. He will have 250,000 health points per player, so taking George on will require a lot of planning and teamwork. That's on top of the fact that you'll still be dealing with other zombies that are trying to take a meaty chunk out of you. What makes George the ultimate tank though is that you will unload clip after clip into him. You will swap out weapons to keep shooting him. You'll spend a crap ton of points for either wall weapons or the mystery box. After all this shooting and you somehow still survive, you will learn that George does not really die. Instead, he will fall to his knees, drop a bunch of items, and then run off. Talk about a middle finger for all that hard work. If I were to waste a shit ton of ammo and points to kill something in a video game, that bastard better be on the ground for me to teabag. So that was my list for 7 tanks in video games. This was another fun one to write, plus I was able to write a good chunk of it while drunk, so it's a win-win. I do want to apologize that it took so long to get this video out, mainly due to technical difficulties and finals for school. As always, if you have a tank that you would have nominated for this list, let me know in the comments, and if we can get enough tanks, I will make a commenter's edition featuring your picks. Also, if you have a suggestion for a countdown, be sure to let me know. I'll have a poll in the description for the next review that I would like you to go and vote on. The options for the next review are the first Spyro game in the Reignited trilogy, or the World of Light from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, people.